I built a revolutionary AI system from scratch, poured 6 months of sleepless nights into code, skipped birthdays, anniversaries, everything. But during the board presentation, my boss smiled, shook hands, and thanked everyone, except me. My name was nowhere. 3 days later, he got promoted. 2 weeks later, I was fired. No warning, no explanation, just a clean break. I thought that was the end. I thought I was powerless, but I was wrong. I had a secret, buried deep in the code, something he missed. And once I triggered it, the entire company would have no choice but to face the truth. The office lights had long dimmed, leaving just the blue-white glow of my monitor to keep me company. It was nearly 2 a.m. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, and my fingers moved more from memory than focus. But I wasn't stopping. The AI system we'd been developing, codenamed Sentinel, was nearing completion. And it wasn't just another project. It was my life's work, my fingerprint on the future of this company. Every predictive model, every anomaly detection layer, every line of Python bore my thought process, my obsession. I saved the latest build, backed it up on the internal repo, and pushed one last simulation. It ran smooth. Better than I'd even expected. I should have felt elated. Instead, I just felt hollow. The drive home was a blur. My car running on muscle memory, while my brain replayed lines of code like verses of a broken prayer. When I slipped the key into the door, the house was dark and still. Shoes left neatly by the door. A toy truck at the foot of the stairs. Upstairs, I cracked open my son's door, careful not to let the hinges creak. He was curled up, breathing soft and steady, a thin arm hanging off the bed. I watched him for a moment longer than usual. Then I closed the door. Sarah was still awake. She sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone, face lit only by the screen. "It's 2 a.m., she said. No anger, just a numb disappointment. "Do you even remember what day it is?" I rubbed my eyes, scanning my foggy memory. "Tuesday?" she sighed. "It's Wednesday. Yesterday was parent-teacher night. You promised Liam you'd be there." Shame climbed up my throat. I forgot. I was so close to finishing the build. "You're always close," she said, standing. "You're living for that project, Mason. But your son needs a father, not a ghost who slips in after midnight." I wanted to argue, but she was right. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Andrew. "Can you send me tonight's code snapshot before you crash? I want to do a quick review. You're killing it, man." My fingers hovered over the screen. That request, it was unusual. Code was usually reviewed in joint sessions, never ad hoc like this. Still, it was Andrew, my CTO. The guy who'd championed my promotion 2 years ago. I convinced myself it was harmless. I compressed the files and hit send. Have you ever handed over everything you built, believing it was safe, only to feel like you just gave away a piece of your soul? The next morning, I walked into the boardroom, feeling like the underdog turned MVP. Andrew stood at the front, sleeves rolled up, animated as ever. Slides flashed behind him. The architecture, projections, demo results. The board members leaned in with interest. "This system," Andrew said, pausing for effect, "has the potential to redefine how we detect market manipulation in real time. The innovation, the predictive capabilities. This is the kind of tech that puts us 5 years ahead of the competition." Applause. Even the usually skeptical CFO nodded in approval. I waited for the moment he'd gesture at me and say, And none of this would be possible without Mason Black. I even sat up a little straighter. That moment never came. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. When the meeting ended, people filtered out with handshakes and congratulations. I stood frozen, waiting. Maybe he'd at least catch my eye. Instead, Andrew walked right past me, talking to one of the board members about a vision for the next phase. As I turned to leave, Daniel, a back-end engineer, caught my shoulder. He looked like he wanted to say something, but only managed, "I'm sorry, man. I've got a kid. Mortgage. You know how it is." Then he walked away. Back at my desk, I opened the proposal document Andrew had shared with the board. My name, nowhere. In the commit history of the project, my contributions were logged under a general DevOps tag. Someone had rewritten access logs, scrubbed attribution. I stared at the screen, numb. The same hands that had written the entire framework now trembled. I opened the bathroom door, walked to the mirror, and looked into my own eyes. My reflection didn't blink. Was this what I'd been reduced to? A disposable tool? That night, as I sat in the living room in silence, a ping echoed from my laptop. A new email. No subject, no sender name, just a line of text. "You're not the first. Don't let them win." The message haunted me for days. "You're not the first. Don't let them win." I couldn't shake it. It looped in my head while I stared at my computer, fingers frozen over the keyboard. I started digging. Logs, emails, commit histories, even archived backups. Everywhere I looked, my name had been ghosted from the project like I'd never existed. Worse, every file had a new timestamp, modified exactly 48 hours before the board meeting. It didn't make sense. Unless someone had rewritten metadata through admin access. Only a handful of people had that level of clearance. Andrew, obviously, maybe the lead sysadmin. I thought about asking her, but something told me not to involve anyone. Yet. On a hunch, I tried an older internal mirror server we used back when Sentinel was still in its infancy. It had been archived and password locked for months. I punched in my old credentials. Denied. I tried again. Denied. Then I paused, pulled out my notebook, where I used to jot dev notes, and flipped to a corner where I'd scribbled a two-factor recovery key months ago during a late-night panic. It worked. Inside the mirror server, I found it. A version of the code base untouched by admin interference. Raw, authentic, with my original comments still intact, except the download button grayed out. No permission. I was locked out of read-write access. My own creation was under digital lock and key. The next day at work, I was called into Andrew's office. He looked calm. Too calm. "There's a problem with Sentinel," he said, sliding a printed chart across the table. "False positives in the predictive module. A serious one. We ran a test case. Massive anomaly detection failure." I leaned forward. "That can't be. I stress-tested every model." He raised a hand. "I know, Mason. I believe you. But the issue is there. You're the lead dev. It's your module." I froze. He went on, "I'm placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. Just until we clean this up. Don't worry. It's not punitive. Just protocol." Protocol. That word never meant safety. It meant containment. When I returned to my desk, my access was already revoked. Outside, I walked without thinking. Across the campus, down into the lower maintenance level I hadn't visited since we moved buildings. Something in me needed space. Silence. That's when I saw him. Pushing a mop across the empty corridor, headphones in, hunched over like a ghost in a janitor's uniform. I nearly walked past until something about his face tugged at my memory. I turned. Eli? He froze, slowly removed his earbuds. Do I know you? It's Mason. You work dev security, right? Before you disappeared. He gave a humorless smile. Before they erased me, you mean? We sat in the maintenance lounge for nearly an hour. He told me everything. How he'd once tried to report Andrew for reusing client-side encryption modules from a private contractor against protocol. How his access was revoked within a week. Then came the HR meeting. Then nothing. Silence. He was offered a severance under NDA. Refused. They blackballed him. Months later, he showed up as a janitor. It pays. That's all I need now, he said. But I'm not crazy. I knew one day someone else would see it too. That night, I went back to the mirror server. And this time, I didn't try brute force. I accessed a secondary path I remembered from a dev test. One Andrew probably never knew existed. It gave me read-only access to a buried subdirectory called logs dev v1. Inside, version commit messages, code snapshots, and my development diary in Markdown format, complete with timestamps and screen-recorded snippets. Me, talking to the camera. Me, explaining logic branches. Me, working through edge cases. And in the final file, a line of comment in red, buried deep inside the behavior prediction module, cues authored by M. Black. Behavior tree v3 test build. They missed it. It was proof. Not just that I'd written the code, but that I documented it in a way no one else could fake. Later that week, I was home, still suspended. Liam came into my office carrying a drawing. Look, he said, holding it up. A crayon sketch. Me in a cape, standing between a building and a dark figure. What's this? I asked. You're stopping the bad guy from stealing your robot, he said proudly. You're a good guy. I smiled weakly. He added more seriously, but good guys cry a lot, don't they? I couldn't answer. I just pulled him close. That evening, I received a message on LinkedIn. A recruiter from Arxon Analytics, one of our top competitors. The message read, "We were impressed with your work on Sentinel. Would love to talk about an opportunity." But something didn't sit right. How did they know about Sentinel? I clicked on the recruiter's profile, and there it was, a shared post from a board member at our company with demo slides from Sentinel. Not internal, not confidential, public. I stared at the screen, heartbeat rising. They had already seen the product, before we'd even launched, which meant Andrew had shared the tech behind closed doors, before it ever belonged to the company. The first thing I did was secure the diary files. I zipped everything, the screen recordings, source snapshots, the line with my initials, and stored them in a blockchain vault, immutable, time-stamped, a chain of truth that no one could manipulate. I created a public ledger key and linked each file to a timeline, cross-referenced with internal emails and commit logs. Every piece fit, every puzzle clicked. Then I built a presentation. No names, no accusations, just data. It told a story. How a system came to life from raw concept to functioning intelligence. How it evolved in phases only the real creator would know. It was methodical, clean, and devastatingly irrefutable. I labeled it Sentinel, a timeline of innovation. But before I could decide what to do with it, Andrew made his next move. The company was hosting its annual stakeholder meeting, an invite-only event where top executives showcased major innovations to board members, investors, and a few hand-picked clients. Sentinel was the headline. It was meant to be the turning point that would secure Andrew's legacy as CTO. I wasn't invited, obviously. Still, I streamed it. The internal link wasn't hard to access. The auditorium buzzed with ambient music and corporate optimism. Then Andrew took the stage. He was confident, charismatic, like he'd rehearsed the performance 100 times. He started by thanking the engineering team in generic terms, then launched into the new Sentinel prototype, a build he claimed was optimized for real-time compliance checks. I recognized the interface immediately. It was my latest version, but not the tested one. It was the beta build. I hadn't even begun full regression testing when I was suspended. I felt my chest tighten. He couldn't. He wouldn't. But he did. Andrew began the live demo, feeding a simulation into the system to illustrate how Sentinel could catch hidden fraud patterns in financial transactions. The screen flickered, then froze. The simulation crashed. Andrew cleared his throat, rebooted the app. Again, freeze. Error code, then a blank screen. The room murmured. Someone coughed. One of the board members whispered something into their phone. Andrew smiled, forced. Just a small hiccup, folks. Let's pivot to the slide summary. But it was too late. A woman in the back raised her hand. Is this the same version you presented to the CTO roundtable last month? Andrew blinked. Yes. It's had incremental updates since. Another voice cut in, clearer, sharper. Then who wrote the behavior engine code? Because this error, this exact one, was flagged months ago during private testing. I remember the report. Andrew hesitated. That was handled by our architecture team. Collaborative effort. Collaborative, the most evasive word in tech. I paused the stream and stared at the frozen frame of his face. Enough. I switched tabs and uploaded Sentinel, a timeline of innovation, to an anonymous internal drive. I encrypted it, generated a view-only link, and scheduled a blast to every employee in the company, set to go live in 20 minutes. No names, just truth. Then I sat back, hands shaking, waiting for the storm. The email landed in inboxes mid-afternoon. I watched from home as Slack channels lit up. Threads, questions, code comparisons. Engineers I hadn't spoken to in months started messaging each other. This looks like Mason's work. Wait, these log files? This is real? Did you see the video with the diary walkthrough? Within hours, the story took a life of its own. And then something unexpected happened. A name popped up in the company forum, Celine Romero, a former database engineer who was quietly laid off a year ago after filing a complaint about code attribution. She reposted part of her original report, redacted but time-stamped, detailing how Andrew had repackaged one of her data handling protocols in a demo without her consent. More messages followed, more voices, all echoing the same pattern. Praise followed by betrayal, credit erased, then silence. I didn't write back. I didn't add my name. I just watched. Later that evening, Liam tugged on my sleeve. Want to go to the park? It caught me off guard. I blinked. Right now? He nodded. You're not working, right? I smiled. No, I'm not. We walked to the park hand in hand, the sun sinking behind the trees. He raced ahead to the swings, then called for me to push him. As I watched him laugh, I realized it was the first time in months that I wasn't thinking about code, not thinking about revenge, just being there. Hurry, he shouted, laughing. I pushed him higher. Back at home, as I was putting him to bed, my phone buzzed. Andrew, a text message. We need to talk. Privately. There's something you don't know. I stared at it, not with anger, not with fear, just curiosity. The fallout was swift. By morning, Sentinel was no longer a quiet controversy. It was a wildfire. The anonymous leak had gone viral within internal channels, and someone, likely an insider, forwarded the data packet to external tech journalists. Within 48 hours, headlines bloomed across the internet. Whistleblower exposes stolen AI system inside Fortune 500 firm. Tech exec accused of intellectual theft amid product launch failure. Then came the regulators. The SEC launched an investigation, first into the company's reporting practices, then deeper into intellectual property violations. They demanded internal communication records, dev logs, and meeting minutes surrounding the Sentinel project. A subpoena followed. HR initiated discovery compliance. It wasn't just fire. It was legal napalm. And just like that, silence descended. Slack went dormant. Internal threads were wiped. Meetings became terse. Eyes darted across hallways. No one wanted to be caught in the blast radius. That's when I got the email. Subject: clarification regarding Sentinel issues. From Andrew Keller. 2. Board of Directors. CC Legal. CC HR. The content was a surgical strike. Andrew stated that due to a rogue developer's unsanctioned code experiment, the Sentinel beta failed in real-time conditions. He regrettably acknowledged that said developer, me, had violated dev protocols by uploading untested builds, which jeopardized the company's product integrity and may have led to false assumptions by third parties. It was cold, precise, and devastating. In one paragraph, he framed me as a saboteur. He never mentioned my name directly, but he didn't have to. 2 hours later, my inbox exploded with forwarded messages from old colleagues, some offering support, others confusion. A few remained neutral. The fear was palpable. I felt sick, furious, cornered. Then came the knock, not at my door, but at the back entrance of a cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. The man waiting inside wore a charcoal suit and carried no briefcase. His badge wasn't visible, but his posture screamed authority. He didn't order coffee. "I represent one of the board members," he said quietly. "They asked me to relay something to you." I waited, trying to read his face. He leaned in. "We've seen enough to know you're not lying," he said. "But this thing you're tangled in, it's bigger than Andrew. Much bigger. You're not fighting one man. You're poking at an entire structure that's built on silence." I stayed still. He slid a card toward me. No name. Just a burner number and a symbol, an encrypted seal used for private board communications. "They want you to prepare," he said, "because it's not just a trial of evidence. It's a trial of character." Then he left. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up organizing everything. Every file, timestamp, screen recording, and diary log. I created a separate timeline, tailored for the board. Then I split it further, customizing individual packets for each member. Every version told the same story, but through a slightly different lens. Legal, technical, ethical, reputational. I didn't plead. I didn't accuse. I simply showed what happened. I labeled the folder Code of Rebellion. Each email was scheduled to go out at 7 a.m. sharp. Then I sat on the floor of Liam's room, watching him sleep. He stirred, rolled over, and whispered something in his dreams. I couldn't tell what. When I blinked next, it was morning, and the replies began coming in. First, acknowledged. Then, "I've reviewed this. We need to talk." One reply stood out, Simple, but telling. I was deceived by him too. It's time the whole network was exposed. Twist 7. Andrew hadn't just betrayed me, he'd played them all. Later that day, I picked Liam up from school. As we crossed the street, he grabbed my hand tightly. "Your heart's beating fast," he said, pressing his hand to my chest. "Are you scared?" I knelt down and looked him in the eyes. "Yeah," I said. "A little. Even heroes get scared, right?" I nodded. "Especially heroes." We walked the rest of the way in silence. That evening, a notification buzzed through my phone. Confidential special board session, 9:12 a.m. tomorrow. Attendance, mandatory presenter, Mason Black. Topic, Sentinel Project and Internal Conduct Review. I stared at it. The kind of silence that hums louder than any noise filled the room. This wasn't a trap. It was something else. It was Judgment Day. I arrived at the boardroom just before 9. The air inside felt sharp, like it had been cut and rearranged overnight. No small talk. No handshakes. Just chairs scraping quietly as each member took their seat. A legal observer sat in the back, expression unreadable. I stood where Andrew had once presented my work and took a deep breath. I didn't open with a speech. I opened with the code. The first slide displayed a snapshot of the core behavior engine, annotated in my handwriting from 7 months ago. The second showed the original commit metadata, hashed and locked via blockchain. The third, my face, on video, narrating the reasoning behind a specific optimization that had failed during Andrew's demo. No music, no effects, just quiet documentation that cut louder than any accusation. When I finished, no one applauded, but no one interrupted either. Then Andrew walked in. He didn't wear a suit this time, no tie, just a wrinkled button-down and eyes that had clearly not slept. "I need to speak," he said. The chairwoman looked at me. I nodded. I wanted to hear it too. Andrew walked to the front, took a long breath, and looked at the board. "You all think I'm a thief," he began. "You're not wrong. But it's more complicated than that." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a crumpled letter, and tossed it on the table. "That," he said, "is the agreement I signed with the investors when Sentinel was still in Sandbox. They gave us a massive private boost. Off the books. In exchange, I had to deliver not just results, but full control of the IP. The catch? They didn't want a young architect controlling it. They wanted someone seasoned, someone they could manage, someone like Andrew. "I didn't start this to steal," he said, quieter now. "But once I was in, they made it clear. Either own the code, or they'd own someone else." It might have sounded like an apology, but it wasn't. It was a justification. A few heads around the table tilted, considering. Others stayed cold. Then the twist came. The chairwoman turned her screen toward me and tapped a name on the investor ledger. My mouth went dry. It was Henry Walters, Sarah's father, my father-in-law. I knew he was a retired venture capitalist, but I never knew the details. He'd always been distant, more interested in quarterly returns than birthdays. But this was something else. It all made sense now. The polite deflections at family dinners. The way Sarah always changed the subject when I talked about work. Andrew looked at me, then down. He was the one who said, "Either you run the show, or the kid gets buried." I stepped back, feeling the weight of 2 betrayals at once. The boardroom faded. For a moment, all I could hear was my own breath. I was given a choice. Expose everything, including Henry's role, and take the company, the investors, and likely Sarah's trust down in flames. Or let Andrew take the fall alone accept partial closure, and leave the rest buried in silent shame. It wasn't a fair choice. But then again, none of them had been. That night, I sat beside Liam as he colored at the kitchen table. His face soft with innocence, completely unaware of the war raging behind the scenes. He paused, looked up at me, and asked, "If you win, will the bad people say sorry?" I swallowed hard. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not. But they should, right?" "Yeah, they should." The next morning, I walked into the boardroom again. This time with clarity. I didn't hold back. I laid out the entire network. Every whisper, every side deal, every redacted file. I kept the tone factual, calm. But I didn't shield anyone, not even Henry. The truth didn't ask for permission, and I wasn't going to give it the courtesy of silence. When I finished, the room sat in stunned silence. Then the chairwoman stood. "Mason Black," she said, "your name will be restored on all Sentinel documentation and entered permanently into our innovation register." My throat tightened. It wasn't about credit. It was about truth. But still, it mattered. Weeks passed. Whispers turned into movements. An anonymous group of engineers launched a thread called Chike Built by Truth. It gathered momentum fast. Developers from all over the world sharing their stories, their code, and the recognition they were denied. I added mine under my own name. One night, as I wrote a blog post about it, Liam climbed into my lap. "What are you writing?" he asked. "A story," I said, "about how people like us can still do good things, even if others try to take them." He nodded. "So they won't forget?" "Exactly," I said. "So they won't forget." He wrapped his arms around me and stayed there for a long time. A few days later, I received an email. Not from a recruiter, not from press. It was from a nonprofit tech coalition, International. Their mission? Build transparent ecosystems where developers could protect their IP, collaborate fairly, and report abuse safely. Subject line: "We read your story. We believe in what you're building. Let's talk." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The world was finally shifting, not because I shouted, but because I didn't stay silent. The office was nothing like the one I'd left behind. No polished chrome, no marble floors, just an open space, natural light spilling through dusty windows, and whiteboards filled with scribbled diagrams and questions like, "What if we just told the truth?" It felt raw, unpolished, real. The startup, Atlas Ethics, had been founded by a small group of developers who, like me, had once been silenced, pushed out, buried under NDAs, or worse. They didn't build products for acquisition. They built tools for protection, platforms that verified authorship, safeguarded transparency, and elevated the voices no one else wanted to hear. Joining them didn't feel like starting over. It felt like picking up where I should have always been. One afternoon, during a strategy session, we sat in a circle. Engineers, designers, even a few ex-lawyers, sharing our reasons for being here. No slides, no metrics, just stories. When it was my turn, I didn't rehearse. "I'm not here to fight my old company," I said. "I'm here because I realized winning doesn't mean crushing someone else. It means building something so honest, no one can steal it without the world noticing." Heads nodded. Some smiled. One woman, who'd once been sued for claiming her code in court, wiped a tear. Later that week, I received an email. Subject: acquisition interest, Sentinel integration, proposal sender, legal department, Innovatech, my former employer. The offer was formal, professional, and almost laughable in its politeness. They wanted to purchase a streamlined version of the Sentinel protocol, now registered under my name and Atlas Ethics. Full rights, full license, a multi-million-dollar offer. I didn't even have to think. I declined. Not because of pride, because I knew what they'd do with it. Strip it, rebrand it, pretend it had always been theirs. Again, that night, I took Liam with me to an Ethics in Tech Summit where I'd been invited to speak. He wore a little suit jacket, too big for his frame, but he loved it. After my panel, as I stepped off the stage, Sarah reached for my hand. She leaned in and whispered, "You're lighter now. I can see it, like you've come back to yourself." I squeezed her hand. It's because I finally stopped carrying what wasn't mine. We walked out together, the three of us, into the cool evening air. At home, I tucked Liam into bed. He was halfway asleep when he mumbled, "You still write stories?" "Sometimes," I said, brushing his hair back. He nodded. "Tell good ones, okay?" "I will," I whispered. Then my phone buzzed. An old email address, a name I hadn't seen in months. From Andrew Keller. Subject, "You've won, but a bigger war is coming." I stared at it, not with fear, not with anger. Just the calm recognition that comes when you realize the villain in your life is no longer powerful, just loud. I didn't open the message. Not yet. Instead, I logged onto the Atlas Ethics platform and started a new entry. The foundation launched a month later. Code with Honor. Its mission was simple: to provide legal, financial, and mental health support to developers who'd been exploited, erased, or silenced. We created mentorship programs, scholarships, and even an encrypted platform where whistleblowers could anonymously upload proof of authorship to a distributed ledger, free and forever. We didn't advertise. We didn't chase headlines. But people found us. One day, during an intake meeting, I reviewed the background profile of a new applicant. A back-end developer, mid-20s, talented, recently laid off from a major firm after pushing back on unethical data usage. The name stopped me. Eli Keller. My pulse slowed. Andrew's son. I hadn't seen the name in years. But the resemblance was undeniable when he walked into the room. Sharp eyes, guarded posture, but none of the arrogance his father had worn like a badge. He sat across from me, hands folded. "I know who you are," he said quietly. "And I know what my father did. I'm not here to fix that. I'm just trying to be something different." I nodded. "Then let's build something better." We shook hands. No theatrics, just quiet understanding. Weeks passed. Atlas Ethics grew, not in headcount or funding, but in integrity. The kind that doesn't make headlines, but changes things slowly, cell by cell, like healing. One night, I walked into Liam's room. He was asleep, curled on his side, the same way he'd been the night I almost gave up. I sat beside him, whispering so softly I wasn't sure he'd hear me, even in his dreams. "I kept my promise, kiddo. Doing the right thing. It's never easy, but it's worth it." His breathing deepened, peaceful, steady. And I realized, for the first time in years, I was breathing the same way.